Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity, ranking all of the episodes of Black Mirror. In this video I will give my own personal opinion, my own personal rankings of all 28 episodes of Black Mirror that has been released as of 2023, so up to season 6. I will rank all 28 episodes from my least favorite to my favorite. This is something I've seen many other articles and YouTube videos do for a while, and I've been wanting to do this for a while, but I was trying to wait until the newest season of Black Mirror came out, so I had a reason, an excuse to do it. And now season 6 has dropped, so I decided to go ahead and finally rank every episode of Black Mirror. So first of all, this list will contain spoilers, probably for pretty much every episode of Black Mirror, because I am going to talk about every episode of Black Mirror, and if I have to talk about spoilers, I will. So you have been forewarned. If you have not seen all the episodes of Black Mirror, there will be spoilers coming forward at this point forward. And also, the other disclaimer I'm going to have to make is this is my own personal opinion. I talked about how Black Mirror is, in particular, is the show I've seen the most varied opinions on which episodes are good or bad. I think this, since it's an anthology series, but more than that, all the episodes, a lot of episodes are very different. They appeal to different people. They have different qualities, cover different genres, have different, target audience. So, some people will think some episodes are great, while other people think those suck, and those same people think those episodes suck. I will think other episodes are great that the same other people will think suck. And so I've seen so many lists that were varied widely, and God, I really disagreed with a lot of the choices, but every list is like totally different, and so I decided to make my own list so you, the viewer, can disagree with it wildly, which I'm sure you will, which is fine, which is okay. I know in particular certain episodes I know I'm absolutely going against popular opinion on those episodes, but that's not really my concern. My concern is just to be honest and rank the episodes how I see them, and if you want to watch, take those rankings for what you will. So anyway, I have divided this list into 4 different categories. We have the bad, the okay, the good, and the awesome. So that's how I divided the episodes. So if you're familiar with my channel, I usually rank each episode in a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. And so when I cover the episodes that are in the category of the bad, these are the episodes I would give a rating of between 1 and 4. The episodes I don't think are that good. And the episodes in the category of the okay are the episodes I would give like a 5 or a 6 to, just like right in the middle. And the episodes I put in the good were episodes I would give like a 7 or an 8 to. Episodes I think were pretty good. And then the episodes I would put in the category of the awesome would be the episodes I would give a 9 or a 10 to, so top tier episodes, which there are quite a few. I think actually that's my biggest category because I love Black Mirror. I think it's a really great show, but of course I don't always think they're right. I think some episodes miss the mark, but then other people love these episodes. As I said, the mileage will vary greatly on the different opinions on this episode. So let me go ahead and stop beating around the bush and go ahead and start with my number 28. So therefore my least favorite episode of the entire show, and that is, of course, National Anthem, the first season 1, episode 1. I've been very vocal on this episode. I mean, it's basically it's the pig fucking episode. It's the one where the Prime Minister fucks a pig. And I think the premise behind this is really dumb. And I also don't really agree with the political statements made in this episode. I don't think it's really realistic. For one thing, I don't think there's any way in hell that the Prime Minister would ever fuck a pig on live television. It's just not going to happen. A guy can threaten to kill a royal all he wants. He's still not going to fucking do it. I mean, I know the Brits love their royals, but still, like, there's no way. Like, he would hire all these spin doctors. They would spin it. They would try to find a way to bury the request that this guy made, that all you got to do is fuck a pig and I'll let the royal go free, or I won't kill her. They'd find a way to spin it and make it seem like he's lying. And sure, maybe some people would see through this bullshit and say, like, hey, you know, that Prime Minister should really fuck the pig. He's letting that royal die. But I think the vast majority of people would fall for that bullshit, because that's how politics work. I don't buy that depiction in this episode that the vast majority of people are like, oh, how dare that Prime Minister not fuck the pig, and then when he does fuck the pig, oh my god, he's so disgusting. Like, I don't buy it, and plus it's just a dumb premise. I'm sorry. And next on my list, number 27, it would be the Waldo Moment. This episode is just unremarkable. A cartoon character running for a low office in England does not really seem like a big deal, especially after Trump. Now, granted, this episode was made before Trump, and in fact, when Trump did happen, they were calling back to this episode saying, Black Mirror kind of predicted it. But not really, because it predicted it because it's not that crazy. Even before Trump, when I did see this episode before Trump, I thought, that's not that crazy of a prediction. This guy would run this cartoon, because I've seen a guy with a boot on his head run for president of the U.S. So it's not very, and I don't think the characters are particularly interesting, and I don't think the commentary it makes is particularly interesting either. Now, I'll get to my number 26, which is where I'm going to start hitting the controversy train, the disagreement train going, because I've seen a lot of love for this episode, and a lot of times, I think on IMDb this is in the top 10, and that is my number 26 is Shut Up and Dance from season 3. I just thought this episode was very nihilistic. Like, I wasn't really that interested in what they were doing with these hackers, like forcing these guys to go around and do this crazy shit. Like, the fact that we never actually see the hackers, they seem to be like the main characters, because what are their motivations? Why are they doing this other than just to fuck with people who've done nasty shit in their lives? Like, they're ruining the life of this one dude who just cheated on his wife. I think his wife had a disease or something, but still, it's like, this is a shitty thing to do. But, like, I don't know. I don't really get the point this episode's trying to make. And then, of course, the main character, we think he's just guilty of being caught masturbating, which is something that every teenage boy does. But then we found out at the end of the episode, the twist ending, that no, he wasn't just masturbating. He was masturbating to child porn, which is something way, 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 way worse. But I don't know, that twist ending felt kind of forced to me, and the fact that they made that teenage boy fight a grown man to the death, and they win, like, fought each other to bloody until he killed the man with his bare hands, like, that's just ridiculous. Like, and I still don't get the point of this episode. So, no, I never cared for this one. So then we'll get into my number 25, Playtest. This is a horror episode, and to be honest, some of the horror aspects of it did work for me. Like, it was an interesting concept of a tourist, going in, an American tourist in England going in to, play test this video game, his new high technology, but it ends up like killing him. But the fact that the majority of the episode all takes place in his head, and in real life he actually just died instantly, I thought was a dumb twist ending, to be honest. It rendered the whole episode pointless to me, so I never really cared for this one. And next, the last entry in my category of the bad is my number 24, Beyond the Sea, from season 6 that was just released. I just talked about this episode in my season 6 review about how I thought this was a good premise, good actors, good character stories. The story was actually really good for the most part, but then I thought the end completely ruined the entire episode because it ended in a spot where I thought it was too soon. I really wanted to see what happened afterwards, and I wanted to see it much more badly than a lot of the stuff we did get because I thought the episode moved way too slowly and it took too long to get to the point, and it was set in an alternate reality version of 1969 for, in my opinion, no reason. I didn't really like that aspect of it, and I wanted to see more, and I envisioned a different ending. Like, had they shown a different ending that to me would have made more sense, where the one astronaut who his family was killed came back and just murdered the other guy and then died in space because he didn't have anyone else to operate the ship. To me, that would have been an amazing ending. I would have loved the episode, but even if they didn't do that, they needed to do something. Like, they just ended it in a very bad place. So this episode kind of ruined the episode for me. So next we'll get into the category of the okay. I'll start with my number 23, which is Striking Vipers from season 5. This had to deal with the two men who were having an affair through a virtual video game where they were playing different characters. One was playing a male character, the other was playing a female character, and there were two men who were, heterosexual men married to other women who were having an affair with each other. And it was a kind of an interesting commentary because one of the men turned out to not consider himself gay, even though he was having an affair with another man, while the other guy ended up totally becoming and embracing being gay. It was this kind of interesting look into sexuality and infidelity and how technology could sort of facilitate this and defy sort of norms on sexual orientation. But I don't know, it was mostly boring. It was okay. I thought it was somewhat interesting and thought-provoking, but for the most part, it was okay. Like, there wasn't enough there for me. And next is number 22, which is Archangel from season 4, which dealt with helicopter parents and how they had the technology to where they could actually have like a videotape of everything that their daughter was doing and seeing and everything. And she ends up getting obsessed when her daughter starts. But her daughter is very sheltered, make a commentary on how she lives a very sheltered life, like she doesn't understand what sex or sexuality is because she's been so sheltered and supervised and everything, and it ends up driving the relationship between mother and daughter apart, and the daughter ends up running away after she, destroys the technology. It was okay, but I think I've seen better sort of versions out there, more dynamic versions of parent-daughter relationships and how destructive they could be. And it seemed, kind of by the numbers, I kind of knew where they were going with this. Number 21 on my list is White Bear from season 2. Yeah, so this episode dealt with this woman who's being haunted, and everyone is sort of trying to kill her or taking pictures, acting very weird. But then you find out that she's actually a convicted criminal who convicted of her boyfriend who murdered a bunch of people while she just stood there, did nothing, and take pictures. So this is sort of, they turned it into like a tourism place where people can come and sort of haunt her and torment her, and then they wipe her memory and make her go through this, live through it over and over again. It's a sort of torture, hell, cruel and unusual punishment, which I doubt anyone would actually, do in modern day. However, it's also sort of an allegory on how things worse, how bad things can get, and how, people just like to torture people that they assume are bad people. Even though maybe she wasn't responsible for this. I don't know. Episode doesn't actually address that. But, again, I thought it was kind of silly maybe, and maybe it took too long for it to get to happen, and the ending, I don't know. Kind of powerful commentary, but kind of silly too. So it was okay. So next we'll get into my number 20, which is Nosedive from Season 3. I like the concept of this episode, how it deals with everyone in life gets like a social media rating, and you have to, if you have like a really low rating and people don't like you, everyone treats you like a pariah and hates you, and so your whole life is like about trying to get likes and trying to get a high rating. You're considered really popular if you have a high rating, and you're trying to suck up to the most popular people. And it's a commentary on social media, and it's also a allegory for how popularity contests has always worked. It's just in this case we're using technology to do it, and this shows you a possible extreme example of how it might go if taken to an extreme, but which I found interesting. But I don't know, it was a hard episode to watch because I didn't really relate to the main character, and the fact when she went totally off the walls and embarrassed herself and got a terrible rating, like, to me, that's just a hard scene to watch. I think they just took it a bit too far, and then at the ending where she ends up like giving up on all this shit, I don't know. I wasn't as satisfying as an ending as I hoped. So it's not an episode I like to go back to a lot, but it's an interesting concept. Got me thinking, so it's okay. So next we'll get into number 19. Hated in the Nation, also from Season 3, which, again, a very interesting concept, which dealt with a guy who was murdering people using this, mechanical bee technology, and he would purposely murder people who were shown to be hated in social media to send a comment to these people, because it's about, and the commentary here is very strong on cancel culture, if you want to call it that, or although I'm hesitant to use that term, but it's about how a lot of social media hate and ire can go towards just normal people, or sometimes they're celebrities in this episode, and how they can destroy people's lives. So this murderer guy thought he'd make a statement about it and actually murder these people, whoever had the highest hate rate or whatever on social media. He would actually go out and kill them, and it's kind of doing it to teach the people who are hating on these people and destroying their lives a lesson, but it's kind of a really fucked up way to do it. But it's an interesting concept, but the majority of the episode plays out like a very stereotypical police procedural CSI type show, which I actually find really boring. I don't really care for that particular genre, and so the majority of the episode, which is a very long episode, I think way too long, and the ending I thought was kind of fizzled out as well. But as I said, really interesting concept, so it's okay. So next we'll get into my number 18, Smithereens from Season 5. Again, this episode deals with, how social media destroyed this guy's life. So he takes a guy hostage and calls up, the head of this social media platform and says, unless he makes certain changes or admits or whatever, he's going to kill this guy. So it was kind of intense, kind of interesting. There was definitely some suspense in there. It was kind of entertaining. But for me, the message about it, like social media bad, which is true, was kind of weak. I think other episodes handled this particular message better or examined it more. It didn't seem there was much dynamic to this episode. It seemed more or less a pretty straightforward, abduction, kidnap guy for a guy who has dark, depressing, dark life who's gone a bit crazy, but so it didn't seem like there was enough to it, but it was okay. So next, we are getting into my next category, the good. I did have the bad, but I don't have the ugly. But we're getting into the good. So episodes I like, but not love necessarily. So we're getting to my number 17, which is Demon 79 from season 6 that just aired. Pretty good, pretty decent episode. I don't like this horror direction that they're taking Black Mirror in, but the tongue-in-cheek way they dealt with this demon who took on the image of, a disco singer in the 70s, and it dealt on very sort of strong issues like racism in a very interesting way, but it dealt with the darkness of the people who had to deal with this, and how this demon was trying to corrupt her because she was in fact corruptible. But then it sort of leaves questions. Oh, did this really happen? Is it all in her head? I actually find this episode way less interesting if you say it's all in her head, so I actually want the world to end, I guess. Although I wasn't that big of a fan of the ending, but I like the characters. I think the characters are really drawn out. It certainly drew my attention. So yeah, pretty good episode. So next we'll get into my number 16, Be Right Back from season 2. So this episode dealt with someone who lost her husband. Her husband passed away, but she found this technology to sort of that downloaded everything from his social media interactions and created another sort of robotic version of her husband based off of that. But it wasn't quite right because the social media... Sorry, my cats are fighting. Hey! Stop it! Sorry. They're just playing, I promise. Anyway, come on! Calm down. Anyway, sorry. I don't know if you hear those crazy cats fighting in the background. So, where was I? Yeah, so Be Right Back. So, her husband passed away and she got this, but a different version who wasn't quite right. Like, it showed the sort of different dynamics on how how the social media persona that we put on is not exactly the same as who we really are. And so I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was really powerful. I think maybe the ending where he kind of freaks out and is like, don't kill me or whatever was, I don't know, maybe a bit too much, but it was still powerful. Like, I still think it was a pretty good episode. So next we'll get into my number 15, Hang the DJ, the romantic comedy episode. And I typically don't like romantic comedies, but I thought this one was done really well. It was pretty funny, and of course it used technology in an interesting way, how these people, and it of course has commentary to make on how dating apps work, and of course these people are actually living in a dating app, how they had this whole sort of romance and life together, which turned out to be all a simulation to find out if they would actually get along well in real life, which is an interesting concept. And I thought the characters are funny, interesting, but it doesn't go beyond being a silly comedy, but still pretty good episode. So next we'll get into my number 14, Joan is Awful from season 6. Again, another tongue-in-cheek, lighthearted episode. This one making commentary on streaming services, how Joan finds her whole life has been turned into a streaming service against her will. I find the concept a bit too far-fetched, but then again, I take it with a grain of salt because it is meant to be tongue-in-cheek and not taken too seriously. And that the characters are very lighthearted, and I find them, like, the situations they're in very funny, and I like how it does get kind of ridiculous towards the end of the episode, and they're finding, and I think the commentary it makes about social media and about how these platforms are trying to cut out writers and trying to make the art form of television shows and movies worse and taking away some of the creativity involved, and also invading people's privacies by, people really who just hit accept on those 10-page long terms and agreements, things that nobody reads. So yeah, it's pretty powerful commentary, pretty good episode. So next we'll get into my number 13, which is Metalhead. This is another episode I know everyone and their mother hates. I always liked it. There isn't much to this episode. It doesn't have much commentary other than the same kind of commentary that, let's say, the Terminator makes about the dangers of, artificial intelligence, like killing everyone. In this case, is making a specific analogy to the Boston Dynamic dogs and saying, what if these military robot dogs, what if they actually become self-aware and go around and start killing everyone? And here's a post-apocalyptic nightmare about these couple people being, just trying to get out and scavenge food, but are being hunted by these dogs. Now, I think the main reason why I like this episode and I put it as high as I did, which I know many other people don't, is because I think the style of it is amazing. The cinematography is amazing. The music is amazing. I think this is one of the most stylistically beautiful episodes of Black Mirror. And it was haunting. It was suspenseful. You did care about the characters, even if there's not as much depth to this episode as many other episodes of Black Mirror. I still thought it was pretty good. So, next we'll get into my number 12, which ironically is another episode everyone hates. And most people would disagree with my placement of it this high, and that is Mazey Day from Season 6. So this episode, it's the werewolf episode with the paparazzi, and I don't like the fact that we have a werewolf episode in Black Mirror either. I think that is a bit silly. But I love the characters. I love the exploration that it takes in exploring the ins and out of paparazzi, the ins and out of invading celebrities' privacy. And this episode is all about Bo, the paparazzi who ruined someone's life to the point they kill themselves, and how that it weighs on her, and how she quits the job, but then of course she's starving and can't pay her rent. And of course this is something really relevant today, and something a lot of people can relate to, and how she's given a lifeline of getting out of it, and all she has to do is get one more picture and she'll be set for life. And so she risks everything to do it, but then when she finds someone is being chained and abused, she tries to help them, but that blows up in her face because it turns out they're a werewolf. But then the person wants to die, and she lets them die because they're trapped being a werewolf. But of course she gets her payday by taking pictures of them. And I think that was a very powerful ending, personally. But of course it is about werewolves, which is a bit silly. But I do still think this is a good episode. So next we'll get into my number 11, which is the USS Callister from Season 4 that pays homage to Star Trek, but not really, because Charlie Brooker said he didn't really know anything about Star Trek. It's not really, it's very different than Star Trek, but I think it kind of is the sort of the dark side of Star Trek fans, or just fandoms in general, and how they're obsessed with things, and how this guy in particular who doesn't feel like he has agency in his life, creates artificial people so he can control them, and is a huge bully to them. But then it gets into some of the things Black Mirror has dealt with different artificial life forms, that they actually are life forms, and it's not just they're created for humans pleasure in just mistreating them, and how fucked up that is. And of course they actually fight back and get the better of him, and you cheer for that. You cheer for the fact that these artificial life forms kill a human being, and that's actually a feat that the audience gets you, the human audience gets you to cheer for the artificial intelligence. So yeah, it was a huge, fun, tongue-in-cheek episode as well. So yes, USS Callister, pretty good episode. Alright, so now we will get into my final category, and incidentally my top 10. We'll get into the awesome and my top 10. And we'll start with my number 10, which again, sorry to say, is an episode that everyone and their mother hates. and most people, and oh god, I've seen so much hate for this episode, and I love it. It's in my top 10. I'm sorry guys, but this is how I feel. Rachel, Jack, and Ashley too. So this is the Miley Cyrus episode from season 5. I love this episode. A lot of people don't like it because it's more lighthearted. It feels kind of like a, Hollywood. They say it's too Hollywoody. It feels like an adventure where, two teenage girls and a talking doll go on an adventure to save a rock star. It does seem kind of silly, but again, the characters are so well drawn out, and it makes very, very strong commentary on the music industry, and apparently it tells a story that's very similar to what a lot of pop stars experience, that they're used and abused by their agents who simply control them, tell them what they do, give them no creative outlet or abilities. They're just like a tool for these studios and these big corporations to make a lot of money, and people in particular profit off of them. In fact, Miley Cyrus said that this felt like it was a biography about her in some ways. And I think the concept of having, the technology of the doll that is actually a different version of this particular pop star, and she's going out to try to save the real her, was pretty damn interesting. I liked it. I really got caught up in this episode, and I like how they used a lot of Nine Inch Nails music and popified it. Like, they took certain Nine Inch Nails songs and gave you like a pop version of that. I thought that was the funniest thing ever as a Nine Inch Nails fan. And yeah, apparently they asked Trent Reznor, and he was totally on board with this. And I love how they played Head Like a Hole. At the end of the episode, I think Miley Cyrus did a really good cover of it, and that song, of course, is about, sort of the mistreatment of the record industry, which is very relevant for this episode. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I really love this episode. So next, we will get into my number 9, another episode I've seen maybe not as much people hate. It's not as hated as Rachel, Jack, Ashley 2, but I have seen some hate for this episode, but I'm sorry. Again, I loved it. Crocodile. Now this one has a entirely different feel to it. Like this, to me, this is one of the best examples I've seen. It's like of the fallacy of sunken costs. Someone who said, well, I did this, so I gotta keep doing this, and so this person ends up murdering people, and it's just one thing leads to another, and leads to her killing a baby, in order all to keep her crimes hidden so she could keep her life. And then that same technology that she thought, that she was fighting against, ends up getting her in the end, and she ends up getting arrested anyway. So everything she did, all those murders she committed to make sure she never got caught, were for naught. It's the fallacy of sunken cost. And not only that, is goddamn, this episode is dark. And I just wanted to crawl into a ball and cry myself to sleep in a corner after watching this episode. It is so fucking dark, and I'm sorry, I love it. I love that. And I think this is a very powerful episode. So next we get into my number 8, the entire history of you from season 1. This one hit a little too close to home, having to deal with infidelity and how the way it's disseminated, how they have this technology where people record their memories, and he's actually, finding out that he goes to a party with this guy, and he finds that his wife is acting a bit weird around him, and then eventually finds out that through the use of this technology that she had an affair with him, and just how devastating that is to him, and just... yeah, it's I think it's a very powerful, very emotional episode, and I think the way they use this technology is to tell these powerful emotional stories is the Black Mirror kind of at its best. So next I'll get into my number 7, which is Men Against Fire from season 3. I've seen several episodes just like this, like some from the Outer Limits and one from Voyager. I think I kind of like the Voyager one better, but this one was still really, really good, really powerful about, these military men who are hunting these monsters, and oh my god, we have to kill these monsters there, and they see these monsters and they're like gonna kill people, and oh my god, these horrible monsters, we gotta destroy them. But turns out they're not actually monsters, they're just people. Their minds have been altered so that they think they're killing monsters, but they're actually just killing refugees who are just trying to live. And that is a very powerful analogy to military indoctrination and to propaganda, which is something that I think is a topic I'm really interested in, particularly propaganda. And the way that's used here, and how this guy, his chip or whatever malfunctioned, and he sees them for who they really are, and he's like, well, goes to his fellow men and his regiment, and like, oh my god, you're killing these innocent people, why are you doing that? But they're like, what are you talking about? These are monsters. Like, it's just so powerful. And then, of course, the ending is very bittersweet, how his whole memories are erased, and this, his girlfriend waiting for him at home doesn't actually exist. Like, it's pretty fucked up in the best way. So anyway, we get into my number 6, Loch Henry from Season 6, my favorite episode from Season 6. The true crime genre that deals with two documentary makers deciding to make a documentary about a murder that was committed in the guy's hometown many years ago that involved his father who was shot, and just how it has a lot to say about true crime documentaries and how this could destroy the lives of the people who are actually involved, and how it drudges up things that should probably remain in the past. And of course the twist ending where they find out that his mother was actually involved in the murders, which by the way weren't just murders, they were gruesome, bloody torture and horrible things done to these people, and that she took enjoyment to that, and they found out about it, and his girlfriend found out about it and ended up dying because of it. And god, what a fucked up ending this was. So Black Mirror. Anyway, we'll get into my number 5, San Junipero from Season 3. One of the more lighthearted episodes, but it's very interesting. That tells the story of elderly people who are about to pass away, that they have the option, instead of dying forever, they can have their consciousness uploaded into this computer, or they can go into any time zone, and they have, in particular, someone who is about to die just visiting this place to see what it's like if she actually wants to upload her consciousness to there, and she falls in love with another woman who had died a while ago, or actually, I think she was, about to die or whatever. Sorry, it's been a while since I've seen the episode, but damn, it was just so good. It was such a powerful episode, and I like how at first you didn't know what the hell was going on. You just saw these, people in the 80s hanging out at the bar, but you knew something was weird about it, and it ended up being an interesting concept, and I like how the way it was disseminated. It was a pretty awesome episode. So next, we'll get into my number 4, 15 Million Merits from Season 1. This episode I always loved. It was the one that first grabbed me in Black Mirror. That it's very abstract, and of course deals a lot with reality shows, and these people seem to live in this dystopian future where they're having to just row bikes, work on exercise bikes all day in order to generate power, and they watch TV and participate in these reality programs. This episode, more than anything, it was more metaphorical. This one I take more metaphorical than I do literal. And I love, and then this guy falls in love with this woman, tries to convince her to sing, and her career doesn't end up very well, and she ends up becoming a porn star instead, and he's like devastated by this, and he goes off on a rant, and like takes a piece of glass and threatens to cut his throat, and then they kind of corrupt that and make it and turn him into a talk show host who's like the angry guy with the glass to his throat, which to me was such a beautiful commentary on the, people who sell out, how you have angry angst people, but the system corrupts them. It's like, oh, let's make money off these angry angst people, and then their angry angst becomes commodified and then artificial and not really real, and yeah, it's just such a powerful episode. So next we will get into my number 3, which is Black Museum from season 4. Sort of an anthology episode that has 3 different stories all centering around this fucked up guy who runs this crazy museum that has so many Easter eggs. It's like just a ridiculous amount of Easter eggs of previous Black Mirror episodes. But they tell 3 different stories. Each of them very interesting, very fucked up, and having to deal with crazy technology. And then of course we find out it's the main character who's visiting the museum actually is pretending as someone whose father was damaged or killed by this guy who runs the museum or his technology, and so she's just there to get back at him, and she gets back at him in the worst possible way. And it's so fucked up, but it's so satisfying. Next we will get into my number 2, which is White Christmas, as more of a Christmas special. The Netflix will say it's from season 2, but it really is its own thing. Again, this is another anthology episode, or yeah, I know it's an anthology series, but in itself it's an episode where you see 3 different stories. And it's, for me, I like this slightly better than Black Museum because it's more unified. I feel these stories connect more where you just see 2 guys in a cabin forced to talk alone together on Christmas, and they're telling stories. The stories end up to be pretty fucked up about how, he was... first one is about how he was coaching people on how to date and actually watching the dates, but then accidentally getting the guy killed. And then how he, for his job, he used to create these cookies, which are artificial life forms, where he copies someone's consciousness in order for that consciousness to run their homes, but he would have to sort of torture them and make them live like years within a couple seconds in order to get them to obey. It's really sadistic. And then the third story, of course, is about the guy who, again, dealing with other technology where you can literally block people, where you cannot see or talk to them, and his ex-girlfriend blocked him, and it drove him a bit crazy because he thought that she was pregnant with his child. So she went on and after she had died and the block was removed, she went out and found the child who wasn't actually his, and went a bit crazy and killed her father, and left the child alone to wander off into the winter and die herself. Pretty fucking bleak stuff. But then you find out that John Hamm's character was conning him the whole time, and this guy what we've been seeing wasn't real. It was just a cookie computerized version of the murderer guy that John Hamm was tricking into confessing. And then we find out John Hamm's prize for helping the police get this guy to confess was that he's blocked by every single person in existence. It is a fucked up episode all along, and it does sort of see, it's not that the technology is fucked up so much, it's like the way people use it is what's fucked up. But anyway, we will now get into my number 1 favorite episode of Black Mirror. And again, I know a lot of people will disagree with me on this because I've seen a lot of people say this was just okay or not that good. But I love this, and I was obsessed with it. And it's not technically an episode. Netflix calls it a movie. But I am, of course, talking about Bandersnatch, the interactive Black Mirror movie. Yeah, I love this episode. I think a lot of people are not looking deep enough at this episode. They think, oh, it's just a gimmick, but I think this episode does an amazing job. Like, I used to play this repeatedly and get all the different possibilities and all the possible endings, and sort of I made this long video about sort of dissecting what I really think it's about. That the ending where we see the credits where he's, killed his father and goes to jail and is writing bullshit on the wall. That's, to me, by having the credits over that ending in particular, making it clear that that's the true ending. So my theory is that all the other endings or different possibilities that we see is just him playing it out in his head because he's obsessed with like choose your own adventure shit where what if you done things differently? Well, how things would happen. So I think all the other possibilities we see are his imaginings of what if he did this thing, what would have happened, how it had played out. And I think it's really interesting that all of the endings that take you all the way to the ends, if you look at it as a true choose your own adventure story, like the ones that are dead ends, are the happy endings. Most of them. I mean, there's one where he jumps off the roof. That's not necessarily a happy ending. But most of the dead ends that don't take you to the end of the story are like he cries in front of his therapist and the true work begins, or he makes peace with his father and stuff like that. Like, those are the false endings. The true endings are the one where he murders his father, or he dies, or something very horrible, and it's sort of, that's kind of, I like the commentary there. It's just kind of fucked up the way that the way that it plays with how the decisions we make affect different things. But yeah, I do think that the actual story is, the true ending is that the one where he murdered his father and he's in jail, we're scratching shit on the wall, and everything else is what he's imagining in his head. That's what I think. But either way, I think this movie is fucking brilliant. I think it's a masterpiece. I think a lot of people underestimate this and underrate it. But that's just my opinion. So that is my number one favorite episode of Black Mirror. So that is it for my ranking all of the episodes of Black Mirror. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to check out my recent review for Season 6 of Black Mirror if you haven't already. And check out my channel for many other stuff. I was covering Star Trek, The Next Generation, and Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and many other shows. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. Thanks a lot for watching.